OK, it's embarrassing for the Prime Minister, it's embarrassing for the Chancellor, but it's done now, and they've got other things to worry about.
No, I wish that were the case, but it's not. And I hope that Conservative MPs listen to the likes of Ros Altman and to Dominic Grieve, that I think speak about the real threat to our public life when you've got a Prime Minister, and you just showed with your clip there, that blatantly lied to the House of the Commons, not just once or twice, but repeatedly. This is the first Prime Minister that's been found to break the law. And he's walking away from his responsibilities. He's not accepting responsibilities. I wrote to him yesterday saying that he should be recalling Parliament. We need to be meeting this week, and he should be coming to offer his resignation. He has overstepped the mark. And, from the point of view of process in Parliament, if you willfully mislead Parliament, then it's not a question of ifs or buts. It isn't a question about any dubiety. You must resign. And he cannot simply argue that he didn't know that these events were parties. Good grief. This was partying on an industrial scale that was taking place at Westminster. It wasn't just, as he's tried to say in his statement, he was breaking the rules. No, Prime Minister, you weren't. You were breaking your own laws. And
But
you were
Mr.
breaking the laws others had to adhere to.
But Mr. Blackford, we were in the middle of a global pandemic. The Prime Minister and his team were doing their level best, working 24/7 to try and get us a vaccine to protect us from COVID-19. We were seeing millions of people dying around the world. We were certainly one of the first, if not the first country in the world to have that vaccine. That was what the Prime Minister presided over. He might have had a drink, he might have celebrated when it was his birthday. He might have had a drink in the garden to thank staff for what they were doing. And now he has to deal with a war in Ukraine. He was there risking his own life just a couple of days ago. And in addition to that, we can see inflation is at the highest level in decades. Come on, he just needs to stay in office and try and get us through this.
No, he needs to leave office, because when millions of other people were making so many sacrifices, couldn't be with their loved ones, couldn't be with their loved ones when they were dying. And you had this culture in Downing Street of partying. Let's not forget that image of the Queen sitting on her own, her husband's funeral, and the night before, a party taking place within Downing Street. They simply don't get it. And he and those around him think that the rules don't apply to them, that they can do as they please. And quite frankly, it isn't good enough. There has to be morality. There has to be ethics in public life. And there has to be the set of circumstances that when you cross the line, as he did, as those around him did, 50 people in his operation have been fined. Somewhere along the line, there has to be responsibility. Somewhere along the line, he has to put his hand up and say, look, I have done wrong. I need to accept that under those circumstances, I have forfeited the right to govern. I have forfeited the right to lead.
OK, but 50 fines so far. There may well be more. That's certainly what we're being led to believe by the Metropolitan Police. But I think it was Dennis Healey who once said that you don't examine your entrails in the midst of battle. And quite literally, we have a good relationship via the Prime Minister with the Ukrainian president. Now is not the time, even if you feel that he needs to go, now is not the time for that to happen.
It's cross-party unity that we stand with our friends in Ukraine, that we stand with President Zelensky. Of course, we stand with our allies in that as well. We call out for Putin for what he is, a warmonger, a war criminal. But the idea that we need the Prime Minister to do that is just simply bogus. Let's not forget that the United Kingdom changed Prime Minister in both the First and the Second World War. This man is a stain on our democracy. We need to show that united front. I and other opposition leaders work extensively with Ben Wallace, the Defence Minister, but just reflect on this, Loki, that the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May, anytime she went to a NATO summit, would come back and make a statement in the House of Commons. This man that's saying he's leading the fight against Ukraine went to a NATO summit 2 weeks ago and did not come back to Parliament. He doesn't discharge his responsibilities. For him, number 10 is a personal plaything. And we've seen over the course of the last few years, everything that's gone on, illegally proroguing Parliament, lying to the Queen, the dodgy COVID contracts, stuffing his pals that give money to the Tories into the House of Lords. This man doesn't understand how he should behave as Prime Minister. And this insult to the people of the United Kingdom, by lying to Parliament repeatedly, the first Prime Minister that breaks the law, quite simply, he has to go. There's no ifs or buts. He has to go.
OK, if it's not about... So let's talk about Brexit then, should we? For, whatever your view is on Brexit, we are where we are. We need the trade deals in order to get our economy back up and running again. We've seen what interest rates are doing. The Prime Minister needs to straddle the world stage and show that we are a force to be reckoned with. He doesn't need people bickering with him because he had a can of beer or whatever it was for his birthday.
It wasn't about a can of beer. It was about a culture of partying. When it comes to Brexit, myself and others told them that we needed to have a proper trading relationship with the European Union. We talked about, for us, our compromise with the single market and the customs union. He's now got the shambles of the Northern Ireland Protocol that's leading to all sorts of problems because he did a deal that quite simply doesn't fit the needs of UK businesses and UK consumers. But he's responsible for that. He created that. And what he needed to do was to make sure that he worked with others, to make sure that he wasn't going to do untold damage to the UK economy as he's now doing.
Nevertheless, he is where he is, and it doesn't look as though he's moving anytime soon, because that is up to the Conservative backbenchers, and they are decidedly quiet at the moment. If not him, though, then whom?
Well, this is the tragedy of the whole thing, because it is up to the Conservative MPs. But they need to do their job. They need to understand that the public want the Prime Minister to go. Now, we should have been doing that this week. I hope that the Prime Minister comes to Parliament next week. There's a suggestion he might even be away on a trade trip to India. The Prime Minister needs to come to the House of Commons. We need to have that ability to hold him to account. And Conservative MPs need to recognise that they have that responsibility. They have the moral authority to remove this man that's lied to Parliament, lied to the public, broken the law. They now need to stand up and they need to accept their own responsibilities. Don't run away from this, because at the end of the day, if they do, the public will seek the revenge on someone that can't be trusted in public office.
And you cannot accept for 1 second that was then, it was the middle of a pandemic. He was doing his level best along with his team to try to keep the country safe. And by having a glass of wine or a karaoke here and there, if indeed the Prime Minister was attending that, or a beer and a glass and a piece of cake for his birthday that lasted less than 9 minutes, the only thing that he's had a fine for so far, you can't forgive him for that? You can't find it in your heart to forgive him for that?
16 different events, I think it was, that took place over a number of months in Downing Street. It's that culture. It's that the rules didn't apply to the Prime Minister and his team. The rules were for the little people, for the rest of us. Frankly, it was the contempt, the disregard that's shown for the public. And that very important aspect, that people couldn't grieve properly, couldn't hug their loved ones, and a Prime Minister that couldn't care because he was going to carry on partying.